Hi, and welcome to Say Grace, Food for Thought and Hospitality. I'm Steve Palmer, and I invite you to join me as we explore the stories behind leaders in the hospitality industry and beyond. Say Grace is a place to reflect, connect, and savor thoughtful narratives. Everyone has a seat at our table. So pull up a chair and let's discover the transformative power of hospitality together. Hey, and welcome to Say Grace, where we talk about hospitality, all things food, design today, beverage, the wonderful world of hospitality. And I have somebody that's a big deal on the show today. Smith Haynes, who I think, and I wasn't exaggerating, is one of the most prolific designers in America. I often joke that I can't afford to hire him. He says that I can, but he's a big deal. But I'm going to read your bio now, Smith, and then we'll get into it. Smith Haynes is the founder and creative director of Smith Haynes Studio, an interior design firm he founded in 2004. Based in Atlanta with a second studio in New York, the firm is best known for its work designing restaurants, boutique hotels, and hospitality spaces with a strong mood and sense of place. Haynes has created some of the South's most iconic restaurants, building a reputation for warm, layered environments where design plays a key role in the guest experience. He has also worked extensively in designing boutique hotels, creating spaces that feel deeply connected to their local communities. His work often appears in Architectural Digest, Hospitality Design, and Simply Buckhead, where he's praised for his ability to blend authenticity with elegance. Welcome to Say Grace.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being. I'm such an admirer of your work. You know that because every time I see you, I like fanboy, and I'm like, this is gorgeous.
Yeah, we always back and forth. You always tease me that I can have one of yours.
Yeah, I want you to design one of our spaces.
Yeah.
Tell me about you. What led you to design? You went to University of North Carolina.
Yes.
You were a Tar Heel.
Yes.
Sorry about the loss. And y'all were probably pretty happy Duke lost. But why design? What called you to design?
You know, I always knew I was a creative when I was in school, and I didn't particularly like school.
Me neither.
And so I there was always something like needling me that something was wrong. So I got out of college as quickly as I could, and got out into the world just to see where I landed. And basically, I realized that I loved architecture, and I loved spaces, and I loved how I felt in certain spaces. And it took me a long time. I'm a really late bloomer, but it took me a long time to realize that I wanted to design spaces. So the way I edged myself into that career was, and by the way, I was working at a bakery after college. Like, I literally was managing a bakery.
Right. In Chapel Hill?
No,
Okay.
I moved to Seattle.
Okay.
So I went across the country and fell in love with Seattle.
It's pretty.
And spent 5 years there. And basically, I'd never seen anything out of the South. Like, it was a big discovery for me to go to the West Coast. So
Sure.
I traveled all over the West Coast, all the way L.A. to Seattle. But I fell in love with Seattle, and I stayed there for 5 years. But I finally found my way into work with a company called Vietri.
Okay.
The woman named Susan Gravely, who imports plates out of Italy. And she basically, Susan and I were friends when I was in college, but then later on, she came to me and she said, I know you have a proclivity for creative things. Would you ever work on a room for me in High Point, North Carolina, at the High Point Furniture Market?
Okay.
So I said, sure, I'd love to. This was my chance.
Right.
So.
And how old were you at this point?
I was 5 years probably 4 years out of college.
Okay.
So that would make me 23.
23,
maybe?
yeah.
So so that was my introduction to design. It was really a little bit more about space planning and styling. It was really more about putting a room together that only had to work for a week during a show.
Okay.
So I did that. I did that for Vietri in High Point and in New York, and kind of fell into that world and fell in love with that world, and worked with a number of companies in the marketplaces all over the country. And that at that point I had moved to Atlanta. I moved to Atlanta because I did a room for Vietri in Atlanta as well. So that got me here, and then Atlanta is such a market center.
Yeah.
So the beginning of my career was showrooms for people in the home furnishings industry.
I had
High
no
Point,
idea.
New York, Dallas,
Okay.
Chicago, San Francisco, all over the country. So
Very cool.
that was my entree into design. That's how so really I was a display artist and a stylist. And so when you look at our work now,
Makes
you'll
total
realize
sense.
that we are really set designers.
Yeah.
So my firm is really, you don't come to our firm and ask us to do our look for your space. We study what you're about and what your brand is about, and we tailor the work to the client. So basically, we're making sets, and we're building theater and film sets basically that people get to eat and dine in.
I love that.
But that was the beginning. It was, and I want to say I didn't break out of that until I met Elisa 30 years ago.
Your wife, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so she had this little cafe, Bella Cucina, and I was still in the world of home furnishings. And I met her and fell in love with her. And then she had this cafe, but then she had the idea to make her food into packaged foods and sell them in boutiques and
Right.
stores and Whole Foods and later and
Right.
Fresh Market and those kind of places. So I worked with Elisa for a few years, and we spent time together developing Bella Cucina.
This is why I love doing podcasts. You
Yeah.
learn so much about people. I love that.
Yeah. So this career didn't happen until we had done Bella Cucina, I want to say 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
And it was off the ground and running, and that was really cooking. And she had employees, and she had everything she needed to make that happen herself. She didn't really need me because we were just working together developing it.
Right.
But so she continued to run her business, and then I met Steve Nygren. Steve
Yeah,
Nygren,
of course.
the iconic restaurateur
Yeah, absolutely.
in Atlanta, who did the Peasant Group, and I'm sure you know.
Oh, yeah.
You've never worked for him. But
No, I
you
did
know
not,
him.
but I know
Yeah.
who he is for sure.
So Steve was our landlord at Bella Cucina, and while she and I were developing Bella Cucina, we did 2 stores. One in Midtown. I don't know if you ever saw that one,
I
but
did.
one in Virginia Highlands.
I remember the Virginia Islands one for sure.
And so one day after we had opened that store, Steve said, I'm doing something special in the country. I'm building a community. But for that community to work, we have to have a flagship restaurant. We have to have a place. He posed it to me that he needed a place where all the deals would be signed. He said, because of my background, like, I don't want a real estate office. I just want a great little cafe where I can have breakfast with people, talk to them about the community, and then we can sign leases in the afternoon. you know?
Right.
So that was the Blue Eyed Daisy Bake Shop.
Oh, wow.
So that was, I would
Didn't
say,
Angie
that was
Mosier,
my first restaurant.
didn't Angie run the?
Well, I designed this with Angie.
Okay.
So Angie and I
The
spent
world's,
tons of time.
yeah, love
Yeah.
Angie. She's great.
So, she is that, she, first of all, Angie can do anything she wants to do.
Right.
Like all she has to do is say, I want to photograph Eric Repair's cookbook. And all of a sudden she has the job, right?
Right.
So, so Steve had found Angie, and she was a great baker, did beautiful cakes and
Right.
sweets, and so we created this this beautiful little brick building. It's actually it's a flat iron building.
Yep.
It's in a triangular shape, and I did that with Randy Miller as the architect of record. Randy is now in. He runs, and I think he's a partner in the Johnson Studio architecture department. So interiors department actually, but and that was so that was really my first restaurant for
That's
Steve
cool.
Nygren. And then
That was it. You were like, I'm doing this.
well, Steve and Marie became very close. Elisa and I were very close
Right.
with them. We actually would babysit the inn, the farmhouse inn.
Yeah.
When they wanted to go on vacation with the kids or whatever. We did that a number of times. So I got very entwined with them with business, and I think we worked for 5 years on Serenbe. Steve and I worked on everything from colorizing the first phase of Serenbe, all the buildings, and choosing all the lighting for all of those homes and buildings in that very first phase. The part that went from the farmhouse, you leave the farmhouse and you go through you drive through the farm, and then you get to the edge of Serenbe. But everything from there to the Blue-Eyed Daisy, he and I worked on for a number of years.
Oh,
with
that's awesome.
Lou Oliver, Robert Rausch,
Oh, wow.
an amazing talent.
Yeah.
Robert designed the lighting for that piece of the community.
Yeah.
And during that time, we worked on Steve and Marie's home, which was the townhouse right across from the Blue-Eyed Daisy.
Yep.
That was a great learning. Lou Oliver was the architect for that building, but Steve and I did everything from literally. I found limestone rubble for the front of that house.
Wow.
So that limestone townhouse, we did everything from choose that stone to all the details inside. Really, we detailed that whole house, and that was kind of my first house. And then we worked on the inn, and they really just opened the purse strings and let me do my thing.
Right.
They were kind of my first client that there were just no holds barred. It was just,
That's fun.
yeah. Steve used to say, and I don't know if the number would be higher now, I guess. He said, not another not another $500,000.
Right.
So I'm not sure what the number would be now,
Right.
now that he has such a big community. But they have, through the years, been a great supporter, and we've done a number of other places for them.
Sure.
Halsa. He and I worked on Halsa and the restaurant at. Halsa is the restaurant in Motto. We worked on Motto.
Right.
And Halsa. But at that same time, you see, there was Ford Fry.
Yeah.
So Ford came to me probably 4 years into working with the Nygrens, and the Nygrens that was really the whole of my work at that point.
Right.
Until Ford came to be. And then Ford really came to me through Michael Phillips, who later was Jamestown.
Of course.
Yeah,
Who's going to be on the podcast in the future.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Love Michael.
Great. So I guess it was 2004. Ford called me and said, I've heard about all your work at Serenbe. Love the work that you've done. Would you would you entertain doing a project with me? And sounded perfect,
Right. Right.
And I knew Ford from his Italy days, and so it was that really something new clicked in me when I started working with Ford. Ford understands those subtleties of sound and fragrance and music. You
Right.
know, how does a soundtrack really enliven a room? And so we had conversations I had never had with anybody before. And in doing JCT Kitchen, which
I
was
loved.
his first, of
I
course,
loved.
and
Yeah.
you know, we concepted that really as kind of this Southern country club that you felt like you belonged to, but you didn't have to have a membership
Right.
at, you know?
Yeah.
So, so that was the beginning of this firm, really, up until well, JCT and 246
Yep.
and Optimist. I still didn't have an employee. It was just me, and I usually hired a young person to draw for me.
Okay.
So I would hand draw, and then I would hand it over to someone, usually that's just right out of college, and they would put it in Revit or CAD or whatever, and they would document it with me.
Wow.
Yeah, and I went through a number of people, but basically during those years of JCT 246 and Optimist, I was still doing it alone with a helper.
I love
Little
246,
helper.
by the way.
Yeah.
The first time I
That's
ever
your
walked
style.
in there, it's so simple and clean, but beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I love that restaurant.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's kind of just it wanted to be a neighborhood place,
Yep.
but we also wanted it to be rather clean.
Yeah.
A
Oh,
little
yeah.
sophisticated, a little
For Decatur at that
little
time.
spare.
Yeah.
Little spare.
Yep.
Not, Decatur was probably a little bit more of a place that you would just hang art floor to ceiling on.
Right,
You
right.
know? And we wanted to do something a little bit more maybe Napa or
Yeah,
maybe a little bit more California
Yeah.
style.
Yeah.
He has since realized that people love the red sauce thing.
Yeah,
So he's
they
gone
do.
back. He's gone back
Right.
in, and we reconfigured 246 a bit, and made it a little more cluttery. We made it. We
Right.
gave it a little bit more layers. We gave it more layers with art and things hanging, and
Right.
that kind of thing. But
That's so cool. You
Yeah.
talked about something was unlocked in you during that. What was that? Was it confidence, belief? Was it knowing you were right where you were supposed to be?
I just think it's difficult being a creative.
Yes.
It's there's so many insecurities that come with being a creative, because really, what is it?
Right.
Like sometimes it's not so concrete, the reason you make decisions. Like maybe something just feels right,
That's the best reason to make a decision,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I really do.
But I think I have so much empathy for all my guys that come to me, and my young people that work with me. Like, being a creative is a very complicated thing. All of the facets of yourself, and I think all of my life I had not figured out how to honor all those pieces of me that were the creative.
Right.
I grew up with a dad who was an engineer. He's an electrical engineer, and
Completely different
he
world.
was certain I was going to work for the firm that he worked
Right.
with.
Sure.
He was just flabbergasted that I wasn't going to be an electrical engineer.
And do
You
you,
know?
I know for me, I talk a lot about, so having a creative thought, obviously for me, it's usually connected to food and now some hotels. But I go through these moments of they're terrifying in some ways. I'm doing a new idea in Charleston now, and do you go through like, God, I'm going to put this thing out to be judged because it's going to be judged. What if they don't like it? Do
Yeah.
you? Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think the things that keep us up at night, or like I really listen to the dreams that come at the end of the night,
Okay.
something that the dreams and the thoughts that happen between 4 and 6 a.m.
Okay.
I really listen to that. It's kind of it's my subconscious telling me these are the things to really pay attention to. And
Interesting.
so if there's something that doesn't that isn't right in any project, we may have 30 projects in any given time, but if there's something that like during that time my 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 mind is redesigning it or rethinking it, very often I will articulate that to someone in the firm or to the client and say, I've been having these thoughts about this. Like I really trust it's probably the quietest time of night. Like 4 a.m. is kind of
It
like if
is.
you wake up at 3 or 4 a.m., it's gonna be quiet,
Right.
you know? And so like that's the moment when you can really listen to uh, what's most important,
Right.
you know?
It's important.
Um, but yeah, it's I would say we have up until the moment of the opening day, we have a lot of excitable moments of like is this going to work or not?
Right.
You know, we um, we had a real moment recently when we were installing the furniture at the Four Seasons Hotel. We did
Yeah. The
a bar for them.
brasserie. Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
Brasserie Margot.
Yep.
And and so all the executives were there. Of course, like all 10 executives happened to be there the day the furniture
Of
was
course.
installed, and the furniture
Where else would
arrives.
they be?
Yes, and somebody had the idea that if these banquettes had this little glide on the bottom of the foot, that it would just be so much easier to install, and if they ever had to move them, it'd be so much easier. But it raised it. It raised it like 3/4 of an inch. So then you've got the ergonomics of maybe the table was purchased just like 3/4 of an inch low,
Yep.
and you sat in the banquette, and the table was too close to you.
Right.
So it was like we went through the drama of what would it cost to uninstall all of those pink velvet precious that had been wrapped preciously
Right.
at the upholsterer, and what would it take to take all of them out and take the glide off? And we decided it would cost less money to raise all
Raise
the
the
tables.
table. Yep.
So, yeah, we have those. They're those technical things that matter a lot when
They do.
you're sitting and dining. Like, is there enough room between that table and the back of my seat for my big belly?
Right.
It doesn't matter for a 5'1", 112-pound woman, but like, are all of those things right? So, for all of those things to come to be, all of those technicalities is nerve-wracking
Sure.
for us. And the lighting is nerve-wracking for us, and it's lighting is a thing. It's an important thing.
Music and
Everybody
lights to
has
me.
to be beautiful.
Yeah.
Everybody has to look beautiful
Lighting is so.
in public spaces for them to stay a long time.
Right.
But getting all of that perfect, because once you've installed it all, there's just no going back. You're not going to be pulling out lighting.
No.
So, but yeah,
Is it ever perfect? or is there always
There-
another thing
you
in your
know,
mind that you could?
When we were doing Serenbe, the engineer, the man who was laying the roads, I'll never forget Steve saying like, "Oh, I just wish this road like were just like 6 inches over to the right." And the guy said, "Steve, you're going to learn to love it. You're just going to have to learn to love this
Right.
as it is." So I apply that a lot, and I encourage clients. There's a lot of moving parts in these spaces.
Right.
I encourage clients to live with it a bit before, often people will say, well, when I reviewed the velvet in this 4-inch square, it was really just so beautiful, but then you get it on an 18-foot long banquette, and it sure does look bright.
I've been there.
Yeah.
More than once.
So we
and I
hope-
get well, Steve, you approved this.
Oh, exactly.
I don't care.
Would we ever
I
have
don't
that
like
moment?
it. I don't like it.
But then, sometimes is it really the fabric, or is it what it's showing against, or is
Right.
the lighting not right on it? And have we installed the dimmers yet? We get, it's easy to go in before all of the dimming systems have been installed.
That's right.
And start to worry about the color of the floor and the color of the fabric or whatever it is. And then, things are really going to change when we start to get all the parts and pieces together, and we have there's a lot of angst in clients sometimes that, we're doing a residence right now, and the client was really, all the walls and ceilings are plaster, 8,000 square foot house, every inch is plaster, walls and ceilings.
God bless.
18,000 square feet of plaster. And so the client we were doing a punch list, and, it was blue tape everywhere. And, there's going to be a mirror. There's going to be a mirror behind this area.
Right.
I think we can give up that one.
Right.
What to concentrate on and what not to concentrate on.
Do you think that the average dining public knows the level of detail that goes into great
They can feel
hospitality?
it.
Yeah, there
They
you
can
go.
feel it.
Okay,
For sure.
so even if it's not conscious, it's a sense of well-being, a sense of wonder, maybe amazement.
I think there's just this, there's this magic when it all comes together correctly.
Little Sparrow is magic.
It is.
It's magic. The
yeah.
first time I sat in that,
Yeah.
you were there.
Yeah.
It was like soft opening.
Yeah.
There's a soothing sensation for me when I sit in that restaurant that I'm like, this is incredible.
Sometimes the thing you can't change that you wish you could, which is a ceiling that's 9'4".
Yeah.
That ceiling at its very highest is 9'4". Some of those ceilings are 8'6".
Yeah.
So, is it something that wish I wasn't working with? It is.
Yeah.
But that becomes part of the good feeling of that restaurant.
Yeah.
It's like scaled like a building from 1890 instead of a building from 2025.
Right.
It's intimacy is part of it, and I will say sometimes when somebody as brilliant as Ford has been yearning to do something, like he has been birthing that brasserie for a long time in his mind.
Right.
He has wanted to do a beautiful French place that has somewhat classical food, but from a modern chef's perspective.
Yeah.
And I think it was a dream of his. And I think sometimes when when a client has been dreaming of something, and like for years he talked to us about doing a French place, and it just happened that JCT was finished with its run at
Right.
at 15 years in.
Yep.
And then we discovered a leak inside the building. They had to tear everything out anyway if we were going to remodel JCT. So,
Okay.
so like, why remodel JCT when you're going to have to put all that money in it? Just go ahead and do something new.
Right.
But I think there's a magic that happens when you have a really brilliant operator, somebody who knows how to train people, has a real point of view, understands how these places run. You know, how does a brasserie run in France, in New York,
Yeah.
in Chicago, in a big city,
Yeah.
you know, and is able to replicate all of that. I think our best ones are when the operator is just like, you know, it's their lifeline.
Right.
You know, Seabird in Wilmington,
I love
North
that.
Carolina.
Love that restaurant.
Great food.
Yep.
An exceptional chef who really sources everything sustainably and beautiful, and cares about his community and cares about everybody who works for him. He would be a great guest. Dean
Yeah.
is just,
Thank you.
he's
I
a
will.
great
I will
guy.
grab him.
But yeah, it's when you have an operator like that, you know, really makes a big difference.
It does.
Yeah. They're smart business people. And then they're business people that have that layer of passion. You know,
Right.
they have something else. You know, they're just some other thing about them that makes everything they touch good. You know, we're working with some people in a group out of Iowa, and they at the helm. Nate Kading. I don't know if you ever met Nate,
no.
but he was at the meetup, and
Okay.
but he was a former pro ball player. He was a kicker for the Miami Dolphins. But Nate moved back to his hometown of Iowa City, and he wanted to bring real hospitality to his city, and everything we do for them just sings because of his group. They're
Right.
called they have a group name called Gold Cap, but they're like 6 really energetic 35-year-olds, you know.
Right.
And just it's all about community. It's all about how can we make people feel good, you know?
I love that.
How can we make a place that our community has been needing forever, you know?
Right.
And I think we're on the 7th one with them
Oh,
in
wow.
Iowa City and Cedar Rapids and Cedar Falls, and now we're doing a brewery in Omaha and in Kansas City. So they're really taking
Wow.
the Midwest by storm, kind of like you're in the Southeast.
Yeah.
They've just chosen their region, and
We're Southern folk for
Yeah.
sure.
yeah, exactly.
You were talking about being creative and also talking about good operators. I talk a lot about when art and commerce intersect and how that tension can be difficult. And the simplest way, and in my world, a chef creates food that's beautiful. In his mind, it's exactly what he wanted to do, but people have to want to eat it, right? They have to, and let's be honest, in our business, a lot of people have to want to eat it for the
Yes.
business to work.
And they have to want to come back,
Yeah.
which
In an
which
ever
come-
crowded field
which
of,
comes back to what do people yearn for?
right.
So this is a question we ask ourselves a lot. Like, and I want the restaurateurs to also ask the chef that.
Right.
You know, what do people yearn for? What are they coming back for? You know, and that's what we often, when we're looking at a space or creating a space, like, do we satisfy the yearning? You know,
I
do we
love that. That's
satisfy
a
the
great
yearning
question
of-
to ask.
yeah, of like, if they want a place just to hang, not necessarily eat, but if they just want a place like, what is the furniture like? How
Right.
far away are people sitting from each other? Are they a lot far away from each other or close? Or
Right.
Um, but that we keep coming back to that feeling of yearning. Like, what do you yearn for? Because if it doesn't satisfy some of that, the yearning could be to be in an exciting action, power packed place with,
Right.
sexy place. It
Right.
could be that, you know. It could be intrigue, but there are all kinds of yearnings that we're constantly trying to satisfy through design, while your chef people are trying to do the same thing with food,
With food.
right?
And then deliver it in a hospitable way that
Yes.
feels warm and welcoming.
And when you come back to the saying for me has always been when good taste and enough money come together, there's also some magic that happens there. When the budget's big enough.
I hope my investors are listening to that now.
Yeah. When the money's
listen,
enough.
Yes. And vision that transcends a short-term budget is a rare thing, and it's a beautiful thing. And
Yeah.
you've worked with many clients that have it. I've worked with a few that have a vision, and maybe it's the Rivet House Hotel in Athens comes to mind. You have a couple that
It's amazing.
it was their love letter to Athens, and we're very honored to be a part of that hotel. Is there a discipline in design, office, I don't know, that you're not interested in? Are there things in your world where designers are hired that you're sort of like, I'm good. That's just not a lane I want to go down? Because you're so good at hospitality.
Oh, thank you.
No, I mean, you really are.
Well, we're doing more and more residential.
Okay.
As our client base has gotten bigger and bigger,
Sure.
people come back to us and they have a lake house,
Right.
or they have a second home in the mountains, so we're doing more and more of that. I think
How does that differ?
everyone would probably always put in my mouth the words that I wouldn't do residential, but
Right.
I've always kind of had a house going for somebody. It doesn't really live on our website so much, but it's a very different thing when you're making a space that people live their daily lives in, and they see as an outgrowth of their personal aesthetic. Very different
Right.
from building a brand.
Okay.
Little Sparrow is a brand.
It is.
When you're designing someone's personal home, there are a lot of questions of does this satisfy what I see as my personal style?
Right.
It's personal style. It's a little different. The style of my business or the style of my brand. There's a lot more ownership by the client and scrutiny from the client of will I, is this exactly what I want? And the hours are different. I want to say, we have a residential client, or let's say we have a project with a client. We're doing their home, and we're doing a restaurant for them, or an office, or whatever. On Saturday and Sunday, we'll get calls on the house, but not on the business.
Right.
It's a different. They're at home with their spouse, or they're at home and they're thinking about it, and so we get. I may get texted constantly during the weekend from a residential client, but not a business, and even the same client. Yeah, but
Their brain's just thinking differently.
Yeah. It's the timing is different. Yeah, they're thinking about their residents at a different time of the day.
What do you think people get wrong about restaurant design?
I think a lot has to do with money.
Okay.
honestly.
Okay.
I think if you don't have money, get creative, right?
Right. Sure.
Like you don't have to do it the way everybody else, somebody like yourself or Rivet House
Right.
would make a restaurant.
Right.
I think the big pressure of people to spend money on decoration or spend money on a space unnecessarily. Like we're working with a client right now on, and we had concepted this kitchen that was, I mean, it was like going to Blackberry Farm.
Sure.
The walls were all covered in wood.
Right.
And we asked them, or we designed a residential looking kitchen that was commercial enough that they could actually produce food for up to like 150 people, but everybody would be in the room, so they could have a wedding in this big room, and the chef's right there cooking
Right.
in this commercial but residential looking kitchen.
Right.
And the money didn't exactly, line up. There was something about the bank loan. And so literally today I spent an hour and a half with this client, how could you do things? He said, well, why don't we just build a wall in the kitchen? We won't have to spend any money on the kitchen. And instead it was like, why don't we keep it open? Because that's fascinating to people.
Always.
People love to see people
Always.
cooking. Let's just do a commercial kitchen and do like, instead of spending $50,000 to build this big kitchen island we had designed, let's go find some fabulous old antique tables that are $2,000 a piece.
Right.
And put a pair of massive, beautiful tables
Right.
down the middle of the room that, maybe they won't have all the drawers in them that we'd imagine the other.
Right.
But I find people can get so aspirational that it's like it doesn't make sense with their budget. And really, wouldn't it be better just to do something that's a little more just on the cheap, or like do something with ingenuity?
Yeah.
Rather than trying to do something that looks like something and you didn't have it, I think the other big thing that misses in the restaurant world is the chefy food thing. We Elisa and I kind of come from that really basic place of food. Like
Right.
we just love plain food, simple food.
Right.
Elisa, we spent a lot of time in California, and literally it's just vegetables and a protein, and
Right.
it's simple. And all of the food we eat is wonderful at our home. But when we go out and food is like, you can tell somebody that hasn't really had experience, is just getting creative.
Right.
I think that's a big miss in our industry.
Okay.
I
agree with you. I hadn't heard anybody else articulate that lately.
Yeah, just like somebody creative in the kitchen that wants to express some point of view that hadn't been figured out yet, and it's not based in any particular classic food item, or it isn't classic in any way, or
Right.
it's just trying, I think that's probably, and I think that takes down a lot of restaurants that could have, like restaurants that are maybe designed up.
Right.
There are a lot of designy kind of restaurants that also serve really overtly chefy food.
Right.
That I don't know if it satisfies the yearning of coming back over and over.
It's not soulful.
Yeah.
It's too fussy and not rooted.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
I have this
I know, you
conversation
do.
all the time. I'm like, it's got to be soulful. And sometimes in being creative, restraint
Yeah.
is one of the most powerful things you can do.
And you do want that person to be able to have a point of view and have a
Yes.
voice in the
Yes.
room, but it can also backfire,
Completely.
you know.
Completely.
It's just, you know,
Do you
nothing
think?
better than some fries,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
With a good sauce or,
Yeah.
you know, with an aioli or a ketchup.
There's a word. There's a reason it's called classic.
Yeah.
Because it's classic.
Yeah.
Do you think being married to Elisa, like being married to a food person, informed your foray into design?
Well, she changed everything about my life,
Okay.
literally. Um, Everything about my life was finally complete. You know, I met her when I was 37. So, I mean, I tried everything,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And so when I met her, everything came together, like my love of food and my desire to live in a world of good food and of traveling. She's a great travel partner. Literally, we'll decide on a Thursday to take the Thursday night flight somewhere and have a long weekend somewhere, you know, like Mexico City or
Right.
like, you know, just anywhere. Because I travel so much, you know, we can easily and cheaply just hop on a flight in Atlanta, go
Yeah.
anywhere. So she's all about travel, and she changed my palate um, in that she helped me understand that like it was just about buying good ingredients, and you don't have to do too much after that.
Right.
So she's from the Chez Panisse school. She
Yeah.
worked with Alice Waters.
Oh,
and-
I didn't realize that. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
she staged at Chez Panisse, and then they hired her to run Cafe Fanny, if you remember that.
I do.
So she ran the kitchen at Cafe Fanny for 4 or 5 years before she worked with the Sebastianis. And she, but her thing is just great ingredients, and it can be as simple as, you know, steamed peas and a great steak. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But we also eat a lot at home because we both cook, you know.
A lot of home cooks. They're sort of like, oh,
Yeah.
we're good.
So people will also often ask me like, what is our favorite restaurant in Atlanta? And we don't really eat out that much here. We eat out everywhere else, but here, you know.
Your love for your wife is inspiring, by the way,
Oh, thank you.
and that comes through. It's really beautiful.
Well, we are both, you know, she's even more than me. She has made being an artist and being artistic like her life's work recently. You know, she has always honored that she was artistic, but not until recently did she say, you know, I am really going to be the artist that I am in all of its facets. And she started painting. She you know, has her food world, but she's writes. She writes every day. She worked with what's her name? Julia Cameron, the woman who does the morning pages.
Yep.
Every Wednesday morning for 12 weeks, she would fly to New York and take Julia Cameron's writing course in New York and then come back on Thursday morning. And she did that a number of times, number of 12-week periods. And so she's a writer and she's an artist. She's a Japanese ink artist. And then she has her culinary world. So, you know, she is definitely, she always grounds me in the fact that we have this artistic life, and it's like we're just two artists in the world,
Right.
you know, that have businesses and that kind of thing too. But we we really have realized with age that it's good just to own who we are, and that is really we're artists. We're both artists.
I love that.
Yeah.
Who's the designer you are most inspired by, or that you admire the most?
I'm really inspired by an architect right now. His name is Andrew Trotter. He's out of London,
Okay.
and he's a minimalist, but he has bought a number of homes in Puglia, Italy, and they're I think they're probably just defunct.
Right.
Almost kind of like, homes from the 1900s
Right,
kind
sure.
of thing. And he's making them into these beautiful masserias, which
I was gonna,
means
yeah,
farm,
oh yeah,
farmhouse.
yeah.
And so he has one called Masseria Morsetta, and he has like 7. He's doing this with a woman named Jane Henderson. I believe that's her name. She's out of London too. But I think they're in business together, buying homes, and I've been very inspired by his sense of minimalism and focus. He's got a serious point of view of just like every room has just one piece of furniture in it that's perfect, that kind of thing.
Wow.
So,
Now that requires discipline.
yes.
Yeah, I mean that.
And he's an architect.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Different than
And I think architects definitely are more comfortable with having a room with one piece of furniture in it,
than designers.
than a designer.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure there's some maximalists that I love too.
I was just
I
going to
really-
say, is
I
there a
love
maximalist that you love? Yeah. Oh,
It's not exactly my style, but I don't know. Nobody comes to mind exactly.
yeah. I feel like how would you describe your style?
I'm definitely my personal style.
Your design style.
Oh, my design style. I'm a film. I'm a set decorator.
Okay.
Literally, I'm a film set decorator person. Yeah, that is my style. It's mutable. I don't have.
But you have
like when some. I think if you love Matthew Quinn's kitchens, or if you love Suzanne Kassler's homes,
right.
you go to Suzanne and she does her thing.
Right.
She I want a Suzanne Kassler home. People don't come to us and say they want a Smith Haynes restaurant. You know what I mean?
What would you do if
They
did?
hire us as the authority of what they should do from a design standpoint for
Right.
their brand. But they don't come to us for. I don't think we've ever had someone say, I love Lila, I want that restaurant. I want that restaurant in, duplicate this style somewhere else.
Okay.
They always come to us for their own thing.
See, I would feel like if I hired you, then I would just shut up and let you do what you're going to do.
Well, we would have some time together,
Right.
and you probably would know the food you're gonna
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, of
serve,
course. Yeah.
right? So you would have a culinary point of view,
Right.
or a culinary perspective, and then you probably will have already either bought a building or have a lease for a building, right? We encourage people to have a lease signed
Yeah, right.
before they hire us.
Sure.
Because we have done a lot of work on projects that didn't happen. So we
Yeah.
try not to let that happen for clients. But so once you have a lease and you know like the food you're gonna serve, then the building is gonna speak to us, right? Unless it's a brand new building that doesn't have anything in it.
Right.
And then it's more like we start dreaming up places.
Sure.
Like we start talking about places you've been to that you felt really great in.
Yeah.
Like, how did you feel? And like
Sure.
you might say I was in Santa Fe and I was in this place and it just like it felt so good. And, you know, you
Right.
walk in and there's this tiny little lounge and then you walk into this huge space and, you know, we'd have those conversations first to get to what it was speaking to us,
Sure.
basically. We let those things, the kind of the business plan and the
Right.
culinary plan and the space speak to us to create the place.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What does the word hospitality mean to you?
I think it's about belonging. I think it's a place where people feel like they belong. So like hospitality is all the people that help you feel like you belong there. When you've arrived, you're a part of it, and it's, you know, good hospitality like envelops you with warmth and safety and all those things that make you feel like you belong.
I love that. I ask everybody on the show that.
Oh, good.
Another question, what are you most afraid of? I like to get let's get a little vulnerable, or as Brene Brown says, let's rumble.
Probably public speaking.
Okay. I'm afraid of failing. That's my biggest, that is, no matter, it doesn't matter. I was talking to one of my business partners today. He's like, Steve, you're batting 900. And I'm like, yeah. And I feel like it's all going to blow up any minute.
And have you ever had places close?
I've had 2
Okay.
out of 30-ish. So.
Yeah.
And
That's a good percentage.
yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
And failures are okay. I mean, we learn. Who is it that has said I've learned
Somebody says you learn more
from failure than any success?
Yeah.
Last question. What is your hope for our industry? I feel like hospitality is inherently hopeful. The reason, it's the second to last question. The reason I started this podcast is I felt like post-COVID, there was a lot of negativity in the media around how bad the industry is, how hard it is. And yet you meet the people in the hospitality world and we're these amazing souls. And I'm like, so that was why I wanted to start these conversations. So what's your hope for hospitality?
Smaller, more intimate spaces.
That is definitely a trend right now that I think is great.
Smaller, intimate, and leases that will allow young people to open something that they can afford the rent.
Right.
And have, you know, I think of those places we go to in Rome that have been open for 75 years.
Right.
You know, inside they only have 20 seats.
Right.
14 seats.
Yep.
And outside they might have another 15 seats. They've been going for 75 years.
Yeah.
And the common thing in America is to open a 5,000 square foot restaurant.
That's right.
That has to do $9 million the day you open,
To
or
pay,
you're going to be,
you're done.
you can't pay your lease, or
Yeah.
you can't pay your, you know. So that's something I yearn for. It's the places we travel. We often go to places that have little places like that, like just small, young restaurateurs that are like have something delicious to eat, and the kitchen's right there.
I was in Paris last week.
Yeah.
And I was in a restaurant that had opened in 1870. It's 38 seats. Tiny little and it couldn't have been better. It was so good. Yeah. Okay, last question. So I wrote a book called Say Grace. The name of this podcast is Say Grace. And I had somebody once say, aren't you worried that sounds religious? And I said, well, growing up in the South, when you have Sunday supper, you say grace. And what you're really saying is what you're thankful for. So what are you thankful for?
I'm thankful for all the people who believe in us and believe in me and what we do. Like,
That's cool.
yeah.
Well, Well, Smith, thank you for being on Say Grace.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
you.
Will.
Hope you enjoyed our conversation. If you like what you heard, tell your friends. We're on all the major platforms. Thanks again for listening and watching Say Grace. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Say Grace, Food for Thought and Hospitality. We hope you join us next time as we continue to dive deeper into the inspirational stories about the transformative power of hospitality.